You're in love with a woman who is recovering from grief. Can this work? I'm Dr. Joe Rangel, the bodybuilding PhD. I'm a retired cop and a research psychologist specializing in trauma, resilience, and men's mental health. So, you are in love and want to date somebody who is grieving over the loss of a loved one. Can it work? Should it work? And if it does work, what do you have to do? I can answer this. So there is very little information out there comparatively about how to love somebody who is grieving the loss of a loved one. And I'm gonna talk about this from the perspective of a man who is loving a grieving woman. You can switch it around if you want or need to. There's very little empirical evidence out there right now. There's a lot about how to get through the grief, which is good. When you talk to people about things like, oh, when should I start dating again? Oh, when is it okay for me to fall in love again? When am I allowed to go back to it? So in doing research for this video, I've talked to two separate fathers who said that when their daughter's husband died, they expected her to remain single for the rest of her life. And, you know, just saying, if that's your culture, that's your belief, or that's how you want to do things, and that works for you, go right ahead. That's fine. But I'm telling you now, there is no psychological or emotional health reason that after a certain period of time, you as the grieving person cannot date. You know, personal feelings are a whole different matter. That being said, loving a grieving woman is a lot of work, and it's going to challenge you to do things that you wouldn't have to do in a normal relationship. And there's also some pitfalls that you need to avoid doing that you might do in a normal relationship. And there's some red flags you need to look out for that tell you that maybe she hasn't quite reached the point where she is ready to start dating. So let's talk about these things. First of all, when I was doing the research for this video, I told you there's very little information out there. There are a couple really good books though. On the internet, there's information if you Google this, and some of the advice that I saw being given, clearly not from psychologists or relationship experts of any form, was absolutely awful. And if people are out there trying to follow this advice, I pity them and I pity the relationship. So here's the facts. First and foremost, men, you are going to need a superhuman level of patience. If you are not a patient person, you are going to need to develop a sense of patience, because the person you love in this situation is experiencing a whole bunch of different things that aren't normal in a relationship. And those are going to manifest in a whole bunch of different ways that don't normally happen in a relationship. Some of the things she's going to do in a regular relationship would probably be deal breakers. All right? Let me explain. The first thing you need to understand is this is not an ex-boyfriend or an ex-husband. A lot of the really bad advice I've seen out there comes from the frame of mind that this is an ex. This is not an ex. Grief and trauma aren't the same thing, right? Sometimes they go together and they are related, but they're not the same thing. You can have trauma without grief, and you can have grief without trauma. But if she lost her husband or very close boyfriend in a sudden, unexpected sort of way, there's going to be more trauma. All right, so you're going to be dealing with both trauma responses and grief responses. Now, I did a video a little while ago about what you need to do with somebody who has trauma responses. This is similar but different. So this is not an ex-boyfriend. This is not an ex-girlfriend. This is not somebody she broke up with or divorced. This is somebody she loved that was taken from her. And you're going to need to accept the fact that she is always going to love this man. Always. You are never going to fully replace him as a love interest. It is entirely possible for her to hold love for this person that has passed and still love you. But if you start expecting her to eliminate her feelings for this person, then you're going to be in for a very rude awakening. And along those lines, we need to be careful about expecting her to get rid of mementos or shrines. Some of the horrible advice I saw out there said, you know, if she's got mementos or shrines, she clearly is not ready to date. She needs to remove all that stuff before she brings you into her life. Okay, bullshit. Let's pretend this was her kid that died. Do you think she'd have a picture of him on the wall? Her mother, you think she'd have a picture of her on the wall? Of course she would. This is somebody she loves. There's going to be pictures. There's going to be reminders. If there was a very special piece of jewelry or something that really meant something to them, you can expect her to want to hold on to that for the rest of her life. And that's okay, because this is not an ex-boyfriend or ex-girlfriend. She loved him before he died. She loved him when he died, and she's going to continue loving him. Okay? That's just something you're going to have to deal with. Her love for him should be the love of somebody who's passed. And we'll talk about red flags later, but you know, the presence of a photograph or the presence of a locket or something like that should not threaten you. Okay? I talked with one man who told me, I feel like I'm competing with a ghost, right? That is the wrong attitude to have. Unless certain red flags we're talking about are there. You're not competing with anybody. You can't be competing, okay? Your competition, in the sense, has departed. You're not competing. And if you look at it that way, then that's going to come across as pushing and insecure and definitely not what she needs. Remember the pillars of masculinity that I talked about. One of those things is providing a safe space for her emotions. Another one of those things is respond instead of react. Right? So you need to provide that space for her, to give her room to grieve. If you start forcing her to try and change things and heal quicker than she can, all that's going to happen is you're going to be eliminated. All right. So she's always going to love him. She's probably going to have mementos or memories of some form. 2, be careful about pushing. Okay? This kind of goes on the heels of what I just said. You can't keep pushing this person to get over him, to forget about him. Again, not an ex-boyfriend. If this was an ex-boyfriend and she had pictures of him around the house, or she sat every now and then, she just got that 1,000-yard stare because her mind took her somewhere else. This was an ex-boyfriend, yeah, you'd probably be a little bit concerned. This is not that situation. You're going to have to be patient, and you're going to have to give her space to grieve. Sometimes that means putting your arms around her and hugging her, and sometimes that means backing the hell off. Because there are all these emotions that she's going through, and they're not all great. She's going to be experiencing pain, obviously. She's going to be experiencing the loss, obviously. She's also going to be experiencing some guilt, because there's going to be a lot of people in her life that are telling her, you know, you shouldn't date. It's too soon. You shouldn't, you know, and these tend to be family members, right? Because they remember the husband. Right? You shouldn't date. You shouldn't blah, 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 blah. Okay. She's experiencing guilt. She's experiencing conflicted emotions. She's experiencing pain. She's experiencing loss. She may love you, but if you want that love to flourish, you're going to have to let these emotions run their course and expect for them to key up around anniversaries, around the anniversary of the death, around the wedding anniversary, birthdays, whatever, okay? This will lessen over time. This will lessen over time, but you got to expect it's going to happen. Your love interest may become emotionally unavailable. You know, one week it's all I love yous and hand holding and everything is beautiful, and we're going to ride off into the sunset together like the end of Greece, and the next week it's almost platonic. and you realize that that is the week of a meaningful anniversary, the week of the day of his passing or whatever. It's going to happen because she's dealing with these conflicting emotions. And it's hard for her to say, I feel so much grief and loss over the death of this man that I love, and I love this man at the same time. You want to stay in her life? This is a good time to back off, give her room. Do not force her to show affection to you. Do not force her to love you. I'm not saying let her disrespect you or treat you bad, but you need to understand she's going to need some space. Okay? Friends and family. This is a big issue for her. This is a huge issue because her friends and family all feel some kind of way about what just happened, about the passing. I mean, just happened, but they feel some kind of way about the passing of this person. Maybe they were all super close. And they're all going to have opinions. And they're going to be telling her what she should and should not be doing. And she may be very scared and very apprehensive to introduce you into this friend group. Now, there's a red flag associated with this too, and we'll get to that. But as far as scared and apprehensive and nervous, that is perfectly normal. She's not ashamed of you, okay? She's not trying to hide you, okay? We need to be very gentle and steady about getting introduced to the friend group, about getting introduced to the other family members, okay? And we need to be accepting of that. If you are somebody with anxious attachment, or you've got jealousy or possessiveness issues, this is going to be a very tough relationship for you to navigate, okay? Because when those times when the emotions shut down and she emotionally withdraws and all that stuff, that's going to spin you right out. So you are going to need to learn to mitigate and control your anxious attachment in order for this relationship to work, to give her what she needs. The red flags. Okay, red flag number one. You feel like a consolation prize. This is when there's a lot of similarity between you and the man who passed. And she brings up the man who passed all the time. And she tries to get you to do the things the man who passed did. And she tries to get you to basically turn into him. Okay. In this case, you're a consolation prize. And that may be an indication that she is not yet ready to date. Another thing to look out for is her hiding you. Now, remember I said you got to be slow and steady about the introduction to the family members and friends, but hiding you is totally different. If you feel like you're being treated like an affair, if you're being kept in the closet, so to speak, and when she introduces you as friend. If she's trying to keep you a secret, that's not okay. All right. That's not good for you. That's not good for her. And you need to have a candid conversation about this. And if she's not willing to support you and acknowledge you, then there's a chance maybe she's not ready for this. And the other thing is bringing him up all the time. She's going to bring him up. Okay, it's going to happen, especially in those emotional moments, right? She's going to be talking about, I remember when we did this, I remember when we did that. It's going to come up in conversation. But if that's all she talks about, and she starts comparing you to him, well, you know, he did this, you should do that. That's not going to work, okay? That's not going to work. She may not be ready for this relationship. All right. Guys, loving somebody who is a widow is super challenging. And if you can't do the stuff that I said, if you're not ready to accept the ghostly presence of this person in their life to a certain degree, you need to ask yourself if this is really the right relationship for either one of you. And if the answer is no, that's okay, right? You'll be saving yourself and her a lot of heartache. If this is something you can do, and this is something you're willing to work at, and you're ready to put in some serious work, then more power to you. And I wish you and her all the best in the world. Okay. I'm Dr. Joe Rangel, the bodybuilding PhD. I love you guys. I'll see you next time.